Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. If you want to talk about famous tough guys in Hollywood, then the American film and TV actor Lee Marvin has a special spot in that category. But there's so much more about this actor than what you first see. You'd be surprised to know he did this when he won an Oscar. Find out the untold truth about American actor Lee Marvin and more in today's video, before he became one of the most celebrated actors in Hollywood. Let us first talk about Lee Marvin's beginnings. Born on February 24, 1924, as Lamont Waltman Marvin Jr. to World War a veteran Lamont Waltman Marvin and fashion designer Courtney Washington. The young Marvin Jr. grew up in New York as a kid. He took up violin and did not enjoy going to school because he had ADHD and dyslexia, which made it hard for him. Despite this, he grew up to become a fine young man, and during his teenage years, the future actor spent his weekends hunting deer, wild turkeys and bob white in the then unexplored Everglades, something he enjoyed without holding back. During the 1930s, Marvin went to a Christian socialist boarding school in New York called Manumit School and Peekskill Military Academy. Later on, he was quite a handful during his teenage years because he got kicked out from a couple of other schools for bad behavior and bad habits, getting into smoking and fights. The last school he went to was St. Leo College in St. Leo, Florida, before a certain event forced him to change his ways and take a different path in life. When the Second World War broke out, Marvin was one of the many men who answered the call to service, joining the United States Marine Corps on August 2, 1942. His father, whom he called the Chief and who was a Marine veteran, was pretty much against it. But from the looks of it, boot camp was the only thing the young Marvin needed for discipline to be hammered into his body, though there was still a bit of frowdiness in him. Right before he finished infantry school, Marvin was already a quartermaster in the Marines. Marvin accomplished a couple of amazing things. He served as a scout sniper in the 4th Marine Division in the Pacific Theater, and even took part in the battles on Eniwetok and Saipan, which was considered one of the most awful events back then. During his service, Marvin was wounded during their attack on Mount Tapachau during the Battle of Saipan, with most of his buddies being casualties of the said battle on June 18, 1944. Marvin was shot by machine gun fire where the bullet hit his sciatic nerve, and also got another shot in his foot by the enemy sniper. Because of this, he was pulled out and got medical treatment, spending almost over a year in recovery. Fortunately, he recovered well and was given a medical discharge along with the Purple Heart Medal for his acts of bravery. In addition to that, Marvin was also given the Presidential Unit Citation, the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal, the American Campaign Medal, the Combat Action Ribbon, and the World War II Victory Medal. Pretty amazing things for a Marine ranked private first class. If Marvin wasn't such a troublemaker, he would have still held on to his previous rank as corporal. But it seems you couldn't really take out the boy in Amen. Even though serving in the Marines was tough, Marvin credits his time there as the very thing that taught him how to act. I'll tell you how Marvin told interviewer Robert Ward, "It was the Marines who taught me how to act. After that, pretending to be rough wasn't so hard, as we all know." Lee Marvin was known for his signature white hair and was the perfect example of an ice-cold tough guy. After the war, this is where Marvin's career really took off. But before we continue, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. With the war finally over, Marvin returned home and took a job as a plumber's assistant in Woodstock, New York. But as fate would have it, this was his ticket to the entertainment industry. While working the job, the soon-to-be actor was called to take the place of an actor, since the other guy had fallen sick during rehearsals. On that same day, Marvin caught the acting bug, developing a passion for acting, and got himself a job at the company earnings $11 weekly. He took on many acting gigs before he moved to Greenwich Village in Lower Manhattan, New York, and signed up at the American Theater wing. Fortunately for him, the GI Bill, which is the law that provided benefits for returning veterans, covered the fee for his acting lessons. At the start of his career, Marvin took on many uncredited roles, and it was in 1949 that he made his stage debut in the original production of the 1949 play Billy Buddin. That same year, Marvin also landed Errol in the 1949 play The 19th Hole of Europe. Things started to pick up from there, and soon the next thing he knew, Marvin's got himself booked and busy in several TV roles. Lee Marvin made his film debut in the 1951 American war comedy, You're in the Navy. Now we're acted alongside Jack Warden and Charles Bronson, by the way. It was also the two actors' film debut, even though filming took place in Hollywood. Marvin chose Toste in California. Then, in the same year, he also had a small role in Fred Zinnemann's 1951 film Teresa, and this was the first time his military skills came in handy. He helped out behind the scenes, helping the directors and Hisco stars by showing realistic portrayal of infantry movements. He even chimed in and helped with the costume and the use of firearms too. Because of his military background, Lee Marvin was somewhat put into a certain character, which is often a man in uniform or in certain authority roles. He had a lot of projects, even though they were minor, such as starring in one of the episodes of the American anthology Fireside Theatre and another anthology titled Rebound. His other earlier works include Diplomatic Courier Down, Among the Sheltering, Palms We're Not Married, The Duel at Silver Creek and Hangman's Knot. He took on the role of men in uniform again in the Western film Seminole and the Korean War film The Glory Brigade, which were both released in 1953. As it turns out, Marvin was also a great fit for Westerns. So he had a couple of other projects in this type, such as The Stranger Wore a Gun with Randolph Scott and Gun Fury. All of these projects later led to his breakout role, which we're about to reveal. The 1950s were the peak of the actor's career, because finally, Lee Marvin's lucky star shone brightly when his performance as the villain Vince Stone in the 1953 noir crime The Big Heat was praised by the public. In that same year, he starred opposite Marlon Brando in another American crime film titled The Wild One Lee. Marvin played Chino, the leader of the motorcycle gang called the Beatles. These two films were widely loved and showed Marvin's success, which led to more successful projects. His role in the 1955 movie Violent Saturday was praised by critics, with one of them mentioning how his performance brought a multi-layered complexity to the role. Marvin also got to co-star with Frank Sinatra in Not as a Stranger, a medical drama back in 1955. He played a lot of supporting roles. In this decade, like In a Life in the Balance, Pete Kelly's Blues and Jane Wyman presents the Fireside Theatre. But if there's one series where Marvin got the lead role, it's in Theseries M Squad, where he took on the role of tough Chicago cop Frank Ballinger. He became a household name on TV, starring in tons of roles and taking on different characters. But there's one role that really struck the critics with how great he was at his craft. Is there a better way for an actor to show his skills than by playing two different characters? In the same movie, that's exactly what Marvin did in the 1965 comedy Western Cat Ballou, based on the novel The Ballad of Cat Ballou. Marvin starred opposite Jane Fonda, and according to the American Film Institute's Top 10 list, in 2008, it was called the 10th best Western of all time. It tells the story of a woman named Catherine Cat Ballou, played by Fonda, who hires notorious gunslinger Kid Shalinto protect her father's ranch. Later on, she hires the same man to get revenge for her father's murder, only to discover that the gunman she hired isn't exactly what she hoped for. Here we see Lee Marvin take on the dual roles of Kid Shalin and the noseless and ruthless killer Tim Strawn, the Wolf City Development Corporation wanted to scare Frankie Ballou off his land. But Strawn just took the man out without any remorse. At first, Cat seeks the help of the local authorities, but finds out soon enough how the sheriff is deep in Wolf City's pockets. So now she looked for the help of Kid Shalin, who is quite a handful, a grizzled alcoholic and comedic. At the same time, Cat had her doubts about hiring him. But what choice does she have soon? She learned that there was a reason why Kid Shalin was notorious after seeing him in action. With his perfect crack shots, the man just had to down a couple of drinks to shake off his withdrawal. Playing these two roles, who are the exact opposites, was a joy to watch, and one might even say that they're played by different actors, where Tim Strawn is scary and dramatic. There's Kid Shalin, who is every bit of comedic relief. The latter is clumsy, often stumbling with pants falling and pooling around his ankles drunk as heck, which makes him more appealing to the viewers on the same note. It also makes them wonder if he's the right person to take out the notorious Strawn. And that's where he's fueled by Kat's affection, trying to be a better man. Later on, it's revealed that these two men are actually brothers who are polar opposites, while Strawn is cutthroat and ruthless in his ways. Shailene is a sensitive man who was broken down by the sins of the world, despite the latter's situation. Kat is the only one who believes in him, which is why he tries his best to be better through her love. Shailene was able to face his demons, and in turn, his brother, seeing how Lee Marvin managed to pull off such different performances. Of characters sharing the same screen, it didn't come as a surprise that the movie not only became a box office hit, but also won awards and nominations. The audiences were able to see a new side to Lee Marvin's authoritative and serious roles with his portrayal of Kid Shailene. You best believe the actor won, and you wouldn't believe what Marvin did during his acceptance speech. He dedicated it to a horse, I think, though. Half of this belongs to a horse someplace out in the valley, which made the audience laugh after. Cat Ballou. Lee Marvin took Onano the Western project, and it's the 1966 film, The Professionals, which was also a great hit. Following this, he got the lead role of Major John Reisman, which became one of his more popular films, starring alongside fellow top-billed actors, namely Charles Bronson, Jim Brown, John Cassavetes, and Donald Sutherland. Lee Marvin's Oscar win, Openida. Lot more opportunities for him, and by then they already knew he was a huger star. With that said, Marvin had a lot of control in his 1967 project, Point Blank, where he played a hard-nosed criminal hell-bent on taking his revenge. John Boorman directed this movie, and his next project, Hell in the Pacific, even thought this film wasn't widely successful. It was praised by film critics by the 1970s. Lee Marvin found himself starring in fewer bad guy roles, and he was able to explore other ventures as well. Though Hestel starred in a lot of Western projects, there was Monty Walsh Prime, Cut Pocket, Money Emperor of the North, and The Iceman Cometh, to name a few. Although he met and worked with a lot of people, Lee Marvin is very particular about his friends and values his privacy, which is why there are only a few times of him talking about his friends in the industry. I can't stand myself. If I could, I'd play the same guy in all my roles. Marvin once said, I don't even like my own company. I've got nothing new to tell myself, nor do I like the company of other actors. If I don't like myself, how could I like them? Since I can't go out in public as much as I used to, I do most of my socializing with the working stiffs on the set during a movie, the stuntmen, the gaffers, and the prop menthes behind. The scenes guys keep me straight when it comes to his relationships. Lee Marvin had 2 marriages and 1 complicated one, which became a public mess later on due to it being taken to court. But let us talk about his first marriage with Betty Ebeling Back. In 1952, despite their marriage ending in divorce, they still lived together for 15 wonderful years. Though they had a brief separation for 2 years until their official split in 1967. The couple had 4 children, a son, and 3 daughters, namely Christopher Lamont, Courtney Lee, Cynthia Louise, and Claudia Leslie. Right after his split with Ebeling, Marvin got into a relationship with American actress Michelle Triola, who became his live-in girlfriend from 1965 to 1970, even though they weren't married. Triola legally changed her name to Marvin and asked for payment, similar to spouses under California's alimony, which became the famous Palimony lawsuit. She claimed that in the 6 years they were together, Triola got pregnant with Marvin's child, and she further claimed that he paid for 2 abortions while her other pregnancy ended in miscarriage. Furthermore, the actress said that the abortion made her unable to have children. The lawsuit was highly publicized, so everyone was pretty much in their business, even though the court ordered him to pay $104,000 for rehabilitation, purposes they denied her claim of 1/2 of the almost $4 million Marvin earned during their 6-year living together. It was because non-marital relationship contracts are different from marriage. So her claim is not enough to cover that part. It took another 2 years before the court found out that there wasn't even a non-marital contract to begin with, thus cancelling the award she received and ending the case. As for Triola, she was romantically linked to the actor Dick Van Dyke from 1976, until her death from lung cancer in October 2009. Back to Lee Marvin. The actor's second and final marriage was to his childhood sweetheart, Pamela Feely. The two married in 1970 and remained married until his untimely death in 1987. As the Hollywood star got older, Marvin's star power faded, and he soon found himself starring in fewer projects. By the 1980s, the actor's last role as a big shot came in the form of the sergeant in Samuel Fuller's 1980 epic war film, The Big Red One. His other projects that followed, such as Death Hunt, Gorky Park and Dog Day, were less commercially successful. The same goes for his TV projects. In 1985, he played his role again as Major John Reisman in the sequel, The Dirty Dozen. Next mission continuing where the first film left off, despite them being 18 years older now, concerning his health. It's no secret that Lee Marvin struggled with alcoholism from his time in wartime service throughout the course of his life, which was the cause of his death. One famous story about his sobriety problems happened during the filming of The Dirty Dozen, wherein his character Major Reisman was supposed to drive a truck with Charles Bronson's character, Joseph Wladislaw. When filming was about to start, they couldn't find Lee Marvin anywhere on set, and it was the filming crew who found him later on at a pub and brought him back on set, all boozed up since they still had to film the scene. The production crew did their best to sober him up, making him drink coffee. Right before that, an angry Bronson walked up to him and threatened to kill Marvin right then and there. But thankfully, he didn't. And we got to see the masterpiece, that is, The Dirty Dozen. Back to the topic of his death, the actor died at the age of 63 due to a heart attack on August 29, 1987. Marvin suffered a major intestinal rupture that made him go into respiratory distress. The doctors decided to give steroids to help his breathing, only for him to go into cardiac arrest months before his death. Marvin spent more than 2 weeks at the hospital in December 1986 due to condition related to coccidioidomycosis. Despite his fame as a celebrity, Lee Marvin was prouder of his work in the Marine Corps, and he was given full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery. There was no mention of him being an actor whatsoever. Marvin's headstone read, Lee Marvin, PFC Marine Corps, World War II. Maybe the reason why Lee Marvin didn't give as much importance to his career as an actor compared to serving the country is because he saw Hollywood for what it is. One day you're a big shot, and the next stone, you're in the gutters. Stardom Marvin once said, they put your name on Astor on the sidewalk on Hollywood Boulevard, and you walk down and find a pile of dog poop on it that tells the whole story, baby.